So Rosario, you get the main discussion points here. We've spoken with Stacy a little bit, so, and then Adam is part of the Dottie team as well. So we're here to answer your questions. You're welcome to unmute yourself, and you can also, if you're having bandwidth questions, if you go, you can also stop incoming video. And now I have to remember how to do it on Zoom. I'm looking for it. I'll find it in a second, but you're welcome to unmute yourself and ask any questions you have. I can also go back and look through to see ones you typed.
Yeah, I was trying to put in as many of my comments in writing so that I could save time during the breakout session. Yes, I know that you're a lot of things. I was going to say I do love walking. I'm almost 70, but I can carry myself pretty well. And so having driven a lot around the city, because I'm a union organizer, so I know the city really well, but it's one thing to see the city from the driver's perspective, and the other thing is to walk through it. And yeah, this is just like one question that I always had is when people ride bikes are given, if do they pass any rules so that they know like at least proper etiquette when they're riding around in bikes? Because I'll tell you, I mean, there are times when I'm walking and I have to, like cross the street, and at least because of my gray hair, I should be polite. No, I mean, they just like pedal faster.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's no sense of consideration. They just expect walking that I can stop on a dime. And, at least I'm alert, and I always carry a flashlight. Like, unless I'm walking at noon, if it starts getting, after 4 or early, I carry a flashlight because honestly, it'll still be daylight and people will miss you. Mm-hmm. There have been so many times that I've almost been hit. And I live at the intersection of Lowell and Evans. But the reason I care about is because my kids tend to dust and they commuted, back and forth. And I'm just thinking about what it would be like if my kids were, commuting at this, day and time. And I don't know what the situation is at dusk, or what it would be like if, like, let's say in a snowstorm, something like that. As it is, when people go pick up their kids, sometimes they take a break from work to get their kids and then drive them back home and then, get back to work. It's not, not many parents are lucky enough to be able to stay home and walk their kids or pick up their kids. And if children are crossing that street on their own, I just want to make sure there's plenty of visibility, regardless of what you do. I mean, I don't want to be an obstructionist just because I know that you have a lot on your hand. You have to figure out what you're going to do with the people that are living here and moving here. And, just like, let's say if I take the bus and like last week, I had to cross Yale there on Federal so that I could transfer to the 35. And are so focused on making the turns. And when I'm talking about people, I'm talking about people on cars. That they don't, and even if there's the icon for a pedestrian to walk, they don't notice it. They're even less likely to notice a person on a bike. And so that's why, I keep thinking about signage as it is. Sometimes, what's evident to you because you live in a neighborhood is not evident to somebody who's just going through. And we're going to get a lot of people moving into the Loretto Heights housing. And mm-hmm. I don't know if the children, where their kids are going to school. We're just going to have a lot more people who are going to be added to the community. And right now, between Evans and Yale, a lot of people just commute from one side of city to the other because they don't, they just, it's not saying that people from other parts of the state commute there. And yeah, I mean, I don't know what it's like on Yale, but here on Evans, I mean, there's so much, the problem people speeding on Yale and on Evans is pretty bad. Mm-hmm. you know, I'm about ready to call Kevin because my flagstone fence that I had finally, saved up to get fixed, go ahead and,
Oh,
because people, and my point is that I don't know what we can do about signage when cars are turning at some of these, like let's say Federal, Irving, or Lowell, where they just make turns very quickly.
yep.
And it puts the pedestrians at risk. And then if it's a bike path, I just want to make sure that the people who are on the bikes are protected.
Yep. Thank you. And thank you for your comments. You're breaking up a little bit more now too. So I think I'll try and answer a few of your questions, and I'll throw a few of those to Adam as well. But I noticed that one of the questions you asked earlier was about, I'm going to mute you, Rosario, because I think we're getting feedback.
Yeah.
Okay. And feel free to, unmute too. Meg, thank you for joining us. We'd love to hear from you as well. But just to answer or kind of respond to a few of the things that you've mentioned, about one of the questions earlier was about whether those riding bicycles are required to have a license or take classes or something to learn what the etiquette is and what's safe. And the short answer is no. There's certainly some reasons for that I can bring up just for thought. But right now, the answer is no, they don't need licenses. And so that does mean that sometimes not just that, but for sure, sometimes they're acting in ways that aren't safe either to themselves or to the pedestrians. But just for your thoughts later to think about, one of the reasons that those people riding bicycles are not required to have a bicycle license is, first of all, because of age. Kids, learn that when they're 3 years old or so. And second off, because there are a lot of people who ride bicycles who are not in the position to be, going into a place to get a license or taking the time to take a class, that type of thing. People who are temporarily in the country or something like that as well use that as a means of transportation, and also kind of the money factor. So those aren't the only reasons, but sometimes when I start thinking, it would be easier if we just had, more regulation around this, I kind of back up and realize those things as well. So does make it unfortunate though, because like you said, some of those instances, in fact, I was reading the crash reports, and one of the 2 bicycle crashes was the bicyclist running a stop sign. So it certainly goes both directions there. A few of the other questions or comments you made were around making sure to keep bicyclists safe as well, and having to do with speed and having to do with cars turning and things like that. So Adam, this one's going to come to you. There are engineering components of a plan, if as we move forward with this, that can help with things like turning speeds and traveling speeds and keeping bicycles visible. So Adam, maybe you can give that one a stab.
Yeah, happy to, Alicia, thank you. So, the first thing is the buffered bike lanes that we're adding out there are going to narrow the travel width. They're going to make speed slower. So as motorists and cyclists and pedestrians approach these intersections, we have slower speeds from the vehicles. They're able to see the cyclists. There's a clear designated area for the bikes to be as they approach these intersections. And excuse me, I'm recovering from a cold. Another item we talked about was those green markings at intersections. Again, those are for signalized intersections. It highlights where we've got bikes crossing those signalized intersections. And then they also mentioned the flex posts. Those are the white plastic posts you'll see out there in the bike lanes. Those are also going to bring attention to drivers that cyclists are crossing the intersection. Make sure to double check as you're making the turns, as well as create that physical separation between the cyclists and the vehicles. So I think a key component of it is going to be that speed reduction. As we've heard from quite a number of people tonight, the speeds out there on Yale are pretty high. So bringing those speeds down creating that separate space for cyclists in the bike lanes, making them more visible at the intersections are key components of improving safety for everyone.
Great. Thank you, Adam. And then Rosario, I saw you also mentioned about bikes needing to have reflectors and lights in an ID tag, and that's absolutely correct. Adam, I don't know if you know, I don't know for the city and county of Denver, but most agencies do require at least reflectors and then at least one, if not two lights once it's dark enough. So that's a law that is very, probably commonly broken, but it is definitely a requirement in general. And then the ID tag thing too, as a note, most police departments use the serial number on the bike, which is really hard to get off. It's usually on the bottom bracket underneath where the pedals attach, and that serial number is kind of used as it is ID tag. All that to say, you're totally right. A lot of bikes are stolen as well. So sorry, Adam, go ahead.
I was just going to add, as far as the cyclist safety and them using our facilities correctly at all of our outreach events, whether it's Bike to Work Day, things like that, we make sure we're handing out guidelines for cyclists, reflectors, things like that. So City of Denver is doing our best to get these materials out to people to make everyone safer out there. So we're trying and making effort to make sure cyclists are aware that they need to be riding safely as well.
Yeah. And thank you. We're noting all of your other comments too that you've had earlier in the meeting, Rosario. I noticed you said the south side is a real challenge and you've had people on your property quite often, which is disturbing. So we'll make sure to note those and keep an eye on them during design. And you're welcome to come with another question too. I do want to ask Meg though, since you've joined us, if you have anything you want to bring up, question, comment?
No, thank you for including me, but I'm just a Harvey Park resident and just want to keep informed.
Great. Yeah, well, we appreciate those as well too. And it's interesting because one of the reasons we do these breakout rooms is sometimes people are more comfortable talking from their position. Either I live on the corridor or those who are off the corridor say, I'm not comfortable saying it because I don't live on the corridor. So we're taking up, comments and everything from folks in both positions or locations because, everybody's comment is valid. So feel free to speak up here too. So Rosario, I'm going to glance through the rest of your comments too, since I know you were having trouble with your connection, to make sure that we caught the ones that, see if I can. The sidewalks. I know that there was a question about that. We have had a number of discussions with Councilman Flynn about sidewalks. And one of the reasons, let's see, I'm not sharing my screen anymore, but one of the reasons we share that slide about all the different ways things are built is because it's so hard to tell folks who are dealing with, inadequate sidewalks. Yeah, we know your sidewalks are bad, but right now we're going to do the road. But that's unfortunately how it is right now. The sidewalks are, and Adam, you can talk a little bit more about this too, but the sidewalks are absolutely considered as, the city looks into which ones are below standard and what order they need to be fixed and stuff too. So they're not being ignored. But Adam, do you have a better explanation of the sidewalk program there?
Yeah, if there's substandard sidewalk, I don't have the link right now, but there's basically, if you just look online, Denver sidewalk program, there's a way to report substandard sidewalks. Our inspectors will go out, take a look, and if it's an issue of people not plowing, not shoveling, they'll take a look at that as well. And if they're substandard, they will go out there and talk to property owners and see about the best way of having those repairs made.
Mm-hmm. And it sounds like a lot of folks, animals, people, kids. Well, I have kids, and it made it sound like the kids weren't part of the people, but I get it. That are using those sidewalks, so that's great. Hopefully, those can get in the queue to get improved sometime soon too. So, but one thing that these bike facilities, if implemented, would help with is providing some more separation, because the parking there isn't that much parking currently taking place. cars can drive anywhere from, you know, the curb out to the dashed center line. And if you put that bike lane in there, it actually adds separation between the sidewalk and the vehicular traveled lane. So sometimes it should help with speed. I saw somebody else noted the mention of it may help with speed or it should help with speed. That's because we can't guarantee any treatment anywhere, but it has shown in other locations to help reduce speed. It increases what we call side friction, which basically is what it sounds like. If you feel like there's something close to you on the side, you're gonna walk or, you know, or in this case, drive a little slower. So should help with speed, which will also help bicycle and pedestrian safety as well. So, and then I'm seeing, okay, I just saw you did another one too. To meet 2030 goals, it would be great to do a presentation at Gust and Hope Cycling is encouraged at a young age. That is Safe Routes to School program talks a lot about walking, but also bicycling. And then also the bike to school days are really good ways to do that. I know Denver does those really well. I'm just outside of Denver myself, but at my kids' elementary school, it's like, you know, the kids realize that if they're not the ones who walk or bike to school on that day, they start feeling left out, which you don't want kids feeling left out, but it is a good way of introducing it to kids and making them realize that it's a viable alternative. So we'll make sure to pass that along to make sure that we get folks when they're younger as one of the goals. So okay, you want to either Rosario or Meg, do you want to unmute, or Stacy and Dana, you're welcome to ask questions too if you all have them.
This is Meg. I don't have any questions.
Okay.
I don't either. Thank you. You guys are doing a good job.
Great.
I have a question. I have one question.
Okay, go for it.
So when we were in the Irving bike lane meeting, I was in the breakout session with the group that lives along Gust Elementary.
Mm-hmm.
And they were really concerned about where they were going to park. Because the west side of Irving would be dedicated only for the school, and the east side where they're used to parking would be no parking. It would just be the dedicated bike lane. They were told that they could park on Yale. So how does that conflict, or how does that work with this new project?
Adam, you might be able to, I don't know if you were on Irving as well, but I can tell you, Dana, before Adam talks about Irving, that we've had multiple stakeholder meetings with DPS and with Gust staff as well. In fact, I think it was just yesterday that we met with Gust principal, whether she's, you know, representing the broad public of those who are using it. But this one was less concerning to her because of how the school operations happen. So we will continue to check in with that school community. They heavily advertise this as well, this public meeting. So we'll continue to check in with them to make sure, you know, their loading and parking needs are met.
Well, I'm more concerned about the residents. The residents were told that they would park on Yale.
I thought you meant residents who were delivering their kids to school.
No.
I mean, just the residents there. Okay.
Yeah, that's why they decided to come back and allow the west side of Irving with the new design. It allowed them to not have the dedicated bike lane. They would be able to use the hug and go lanes for the parents and the kids. And so the neighbors wouldn't be able to park there, and they were told that they would park on Yale.
Okay, got it. I will bring that back. Adam, were you on that design or that meeting?
Yes, I was on that meeting. I don't think I was in that breakout room specifically. That's something I can look into with both design teams and make sure that it's being addressed. Whether, you know, if they're not able to park on Yale, what are the options we're providing to residents to park in the street if they need to?
They would have nowhere to park, y'all. There's nowhere for them to park. If they can't park on Yale, they can't park on Irving. There is no place for them to park.
Right, other than on their property. No on-street places for them to park, right?
Yeah, there's no on, and multiple people in that breakout session talked about how much parking, when they do utilize Irving, and it would stop their livelihood too. They wouldn't be able to have Christmas and different, holidays.
Okay.
Dana, I love you. Thank you. Actually, one of the other things that I wanted to mention is that I noticed that a lot of building permits and a lot of developers, especially up in the Highland area, I mean, they don't even provide a parking unit for housing. And that is just like so discriminatory against families, because we need at least one car to be able to work and get our kids to school. Fortunately, my grandmother and whatnot. But around here there are a lot of families, and for instance, I don't know, maybe just because I do a lot of walking, I see people dropping off supplies to elderly or dropping off, like UPS deliveries. I mean, there's just a lot of that kind of traffic. And also a lot of the people who live in this part of the city, they are the ones that go clean up the fancy yards and clean up the houses for people in more affluent areas. So like, give us a break. I mean, we need whoever's cleaning the houses to be able to at least have their cars and be able to park and pack up all their tools. The people who do the gardening, likewise. I mean, we're not saturated with people who live at home and have that kind of job. I mean, we're working people, and a lot of us rely on on the to be able to carry the tools around to do the work. So I mean, I just from walking along Irving, I've seen the vehicles for people who do construction, and they carpool. Some of their coworkers show up, and they take off to work in somebody's truck. I don't know. I mean, I understand the reasoning and why you want to do it, but a lot of people who would be impacted, don't even know about this hearing, and I don't know if anybody's like sending any letters or anything like that to people's homes so that they know.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. We sent out over 1,000 postcards to make sure that people were aware of this meeting, including focusing, well, it's about within an 1/8 to 1/4 mile of the corridor, so it goes off of that. And then the council office, Dana and Stacy, advertised it on their website, the Harvey Park Facebook page. And then we've also gotten it, send out electronic newsletters, which are harder to target, but that's why we go ahead and send out those. They're actually bigger than postcards, but a card in the mail, make sure people, just to remind you too, we're going to have another public meeting, and actually maybe we haven't gotten to that. That's our last slide, but we're going to have another public meeting too. So please tell your neighbors if there are those concerns, to make sure that, they come out and voice those concerns. Like we said, we've done a study on this piece to see the parking utilization, and we even went back out at a time that Councilmember Flynn and some of the other residents told us might be a higher utilization time, and have seen very few on Yale. But making sure that we consider the interaction of the Irving changes and the Yale changes is, definitely good feedback. And I know that the Dottie folks will continue to consider those as well. So on other corridors where there's been a parking concern, particularly where there wasn't side street parking available, we have also talked to individual residents who are concerned. And so we've talked, looked at their property, looked to see what was available, talked about whether other options were possibilities for them too. So certainly, if the answers aren't, don't answer all the questions for you, there are opportunities to sign up for one-on-ones for those residents who are right in that area with concerns. So, and thank you, Rosario. No, your feedback is great. I know you're not trying to be contrary here. So, Okay, I'm gonna check back in with our team because this is about the end of our time here, but feel free to keep the conversation going, Adam. And then in a few minutes, we'll be ending and going back into just with a few last slides to finish up. So. Okay, so we'll see if the other room is wrapping up here, and I'm going to slide back up through the chat here just to make sure. And then Adam, can you maybe just do a copy and paste of the chat from 6:43 on, because that's been during the breakout session, into another document just to make sure we get it. The chats are supposed to download when we record, but we always want to make sure that we have them all if we need to. So.
Yeah, excuse me, I'll double check, but I think so far we have everything copied.
Okay.
And do my best.
There is a save chat function right there too in the lower right-hand corner. That works really good. I use that all the time.
Great, yeah. We usually get the download afterwards, but good to know you can do it during the meeting too. So.
Yeah.
Just glancing back up to make sure there wasn't anything else that applies to this or that we should bring up here too. Oh, and Rosario, I do remember that you also mentioned the snow and ice on the sidewalk. And as Adam mentioned, that's something that you can kind of report. Unfortunately, the plows do, especially with this Hollywood curb, the attached stuff, the plows do sometimes plow it onto the sidewalk. Residents are technically required to get that cleared again, even if they cleared it before, which is, I know, a pain. So
Yeah, I end up, just like 3 times. I clear it out, and then they keep coming back. But there are spots that are particularly bad. So I was just thinking about schools and like trying to get like Grove gets full of ice, even even on the street, the water, when it runs, when it collects, is just like a big ice sheet. And then the sidewalk between Grove and Farrell on Evans, for instance, you can't even walk there. I mean, I end up having to walk on the street, because I want to slide on the sidewalk. And granted, that's not the street that we're talking about, but where I was thinking about is if the snowplow clears the snow on Yale, like let's say it's going east and it tosses it over to the side, it won't be tossing it into a sidewalk, it'll be tossing it into a bike lane. And that's, that side is notorious for having frozen surfaces when there's a snowstorm. So I don't know, I mean, like that'll be the city's property. And I know you are all good at solving a lot of these problems. I just want you to know that snow plows are going to be dumping ice on the bike lanes.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's definitely something that the city has tried to work through and continues to try to work through is how to keep those bike lanes safe, right? But I don't know, Adam, does the 311 system work for plowing and intermittent issues like that as well? Could she report it through that?
It does. I think there's probably a lot of volume around some of these snow events, but from what I'm hearing, the south side of Yale gets quite a bit of a buildup that lingers for a while. They could, you can always report it and they'll come out and take care of it if it is an issue.
Cool. Okay. I think that gets us pretty much caught up. I know